What's up, everybody? You're watching the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games Podcast, episode number 302 for the week that was in gaming of 31 July through 05 August 2023, brought to you by the E2KG Network. Now let's get this show on the road. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Game Logic from the Rounding Off Affinity Gaming channel on YouTube, one of your co-hosts on the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games Podcast. Welcome back. Sorry, we're a bit rusty tonight. It's been a couple weeks, so hopefully we will kick back into normal cruise control here, probably about halfway through the podcast or so, or maybe right at the end, as it kind of always seems to be when I'm playing Call of Duty. Everything seems to be rather unsettled, and then all of a sudden in the final match of the evening or final match of a live stream, suddenly everything starts clicking. Here with me, as always, I have my co-host, Towmaster99. How you doing, Tow?
I'm doing well, thank you, and welcome back. It's been a few weeks.
That it has. So, without much further ado, let's get on with the show. Starting off tonight with segment one, our gaming experience is our GX show at the top of the hour. Tao, why don't you start us off with what you've been playing for the last week or so?
Yeah, so I jumped back into some VR this past week, and I jumped back into Arizona Sunshine, which is a game from Vertigo Games. It was released back in 2016, and just a zombie, there's a lot of zombie games on VR, but this is kind of more campaign focused, story focused, I should say. You can do it co-op, which I did do with a friend of mine, and we had done it. Actually, I don't remember if I mentioned this a few weeks ago or even like a month ago. I had played a little bit of it with my friend, and we were going through. I think we only got through maybe the first level or so. And I had to stop because I started to get kind of sick because I hadn't played VR in so long. Before that, it had been months, probably 3, 4, 5 months since I'd played any kind of VR, any serious kind of VR. So jump back in this past week, and we actually finished it today. We finished it earlier today, this afternoon. So one of the few games I finished this year, and it's good. I mean, this is the first. I think it's the first game from this studio, and then they have After the Fall, which came out, I believe it was last year, maybe 2 years ago now. Which is another zombie game. That one is more of a Left 4 Dead, Back 4 Blood type of game, which is very good. But I think I like this game a little bit better. It's a little bit more, story-wise, it's obviously a little bit more cohesive because it's more about the story than anything. You're kind of dropped into this Arizona, obviously because of the title, and you kind of wake up and you're trying to figure things out. I don't want to give too much away. and then you just kind of play along trying to find you hear like a radio signal or somebody talking on the radio, so you're trying to find out where that person is, where those people are. So that kind of you kind of go through there, and I wouldn't say it's really wave based. Kind of, there's sections like at the end of each level, basically there's kind of waves of zombies, but otherwise there's just kind of zombies everywhere, and you're kind of not really open world, but kind of open area ish, where you're kind of going from kind of place to place within the level. But I really enjoyed it, and I just the acting was well done. There's really only just your character really who's talking most of the time through the whole campaign or through the whole game. You hear the radio signals every once in a while, but those are just kind of blurbs. And it's like, cuts in and out and stuff like that. So, but other than that, you're kind of just going around shooting everything. There's no melee in this one, which I'm trying to think in After the Fall. I don't think in After the Fall there's any melee either. So it's all about, the guns and shooting. You get a bunch of different guns, a lot of mostly handguns. There's a couple shotguns, and then you get some later on near the end of the game. You get some more, I guess, SMGs, that kind of just small machine guns, so that you can use. But for the most part, I mean, I pretty much, and I think we both pretty much just use handguns through the whole game, so it's not super hard. I think we had it on normal too. I put it on normal, so maybe up the difficulty. Maybe we'll try it with a higher difficulty at some point and see how it is. But one of the reasons we wanted to play, or he wanted to play, especially with me, because since I hadn't played it, but there's an Arizona Sunshine 2 coming out supposedly this year. But I was just checking the website earlier today. I didn't really see any other info on it. I didn't get a chance to check more on it and see if there's any other info, more specific information. But hopefully that'll come out. And that obviously has, kind of upgraded graphics and stuff like that. So I'm playing on the Quest 2, but through PC Link. So I'm actually playing through my PC. And it looks fine. The zombies, kind of comparison between that and kind of After the Fall. After the Fall, they're kind of just they're more like runners, kind of more not as fast as what's that movie? 28 Days Later, 20 Weeks Later. I think it's the two movies. Not as fast as that, but they get pretty fast sometimes. But in here, they're more of the lumbering, kind of your old school zombies. So there's a couple of ones that kind of run at you, but they're not like super fast or anything. I mean, you can take them out pretty easily. So it's not super hard gameplay or anything like that. But it's enjoyable. Like I said, I think I actually like this one better than the one they came out with later After the Fall. And not to say that's a bad game. I mean, I like that game too, but this one just kind of seemed more enjoyable. Maybe just because it has more of a story. Like there's really not much of a story in that one. I mean, you can kind of get little blurbs here and there, but since your character's talking like he's literally talking all the time, kind of reminds me of Hellblade a little bit. I mean, he doesn't have voices or anything, but he himself is just like talking monologue, and you can kind of tell like throughout the game like he's kind of starting to lose it because he's just saying like weird stuff, and it almost sounds like he's talking to somebody else, but obviously it's just him. Well, I mean, you do have a co-op partner, but they don't really factor that into the story at all. But otherwise, yeah, it's a very enjoyable game. I definitely highly recommend it if you have a VR headset to run through it. Even if single player, I think it would be pretty fun.
Now, in the previews for Arizona Sunshine 2, that was at the PlayStation showcase as a PSVR title, he has a dog, doesn't he? I mean, is he talking? So is he talking to the dog in the first one?
No, the second one, yeah, he does have a dog now. That's one thing I remember my friend had told me. He's like, now we can get a dog. I was like, okay. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Maybe you can command it or something, but yeah, that's going to be due for the coming game.
Okay, and he's a very kind of Duke Nukem kind of what was the big Xbox 360 title, Dead something or other, that had like the photographer Frank the photographer.
Dead Rising.
Yeah. So it's kind of similar in vein to those characters, right?
Yeah, kind of smart, kind of a smart ass, and kind of he has his line, his kind of quips and stuff like that throughout the game. So yeah, very much like that, almost like a 80s kind of movie, action movie kind of a guy, just spitting lines and stuff like that. So a little bit more than that though. Also,
I may have missed it. You may have addressed it while I was setting up all the studio stuff. Is it all ranged weapons, or all melee, or a mixture of both?
There's no melee, so at least in this game. I'm hoping maybe in the next game there might be. But like After the Fall, it doesn't have any melee weapons either. It's all shooting. But yeah, there's mostly handguns. There's a couple of parts where you get to use a sniper, but it's just like stuck on one area. You can't like lift it out of like after little platform that it's on. So you can just shoot the zombies, but then you have to go down to that area. So if you're able to get them all, then you can just walk through it, breeze through it. Otherwise, you have to fight those zombies, when you get to that area. And then at the very end, there's one section where there's like a big minigun, basically, and you're just like mowing down those zombies as they're, waves and waves are coming at you. So that was kind of cool. But for the most part, it's just handguns. Like I said, we use handguns pretty much through the whole thing. There's, I think, at least one shotgun, maybe two different types. I think there was only one type of shotgun, and then a couple SMGs near the last couple of levels. So, which is pretty good.
All right, very cool, very cool. Anything else on Arizona Sunshine Town?
No, that's it. Like I said, done. Although there's 2 DLCs, so we will probably go back and play those also. So we'll see a little bit more story. We'll see what happens.
Okay, and I'm sorry. So were you guys? And I think you said it, but like I said, I may have missed it. Were you guys playing co-op, or were you guys like swapping off back and forth?
No, co-op. Yeah, you can play co-op. I think it's only 2 people. It's only 2 person, I believe. At least it was only the 2 of us. So I don't know if you can have more than 2 people. Okay.
All right. Gotcha. For me, the first game I have up on the rundown is So I've been meandering for quite some time. Like I said, I was out on travel. I came back. I was a little disillusioned with gaming. Didn't really kind of jump immediately back into kind of like my normal, paradigm and routine. I, like I said, I've been on travel, so I'd been playing on mobile. I'd gotten back into Call of Duty Mobile, and then, I just hit a keyboard, I think. I don't know what I just did. I hope that all I just did was just jump down to the bottom of the menu and bottom of the agenda, which is like 54 episodes. And hopefully I didn't just delete anything. I don't think I deleted anything. I think I hit maybe the page down. So I've been playing on mobile. I just picked up the Google Pixel Fold a couple of weeks ago when it released. So I've been playing Horizon Turbo on that. And just like I said, just kind of in a malaise. And just in the last few days, I've kind of gotten back into it, gotten re-engaged with gaming. And so I wanted to give a game that I'd had my eye on for a while, which was System Shock. So when I got started in PC gaming, it was technically round 2, but we'll just call it my start in PC gaming. I played System Shock 2, which was, I think, a 1999 title, maybe early 2000. And it was really the first game of kind of what is being referred to now as an immersive sim, which I'm kind of on the edge about going along with that. It seems like it's kind of another one of these kind of gaming journalist things where we're trying to unnecessarily name every variant of genre as its own genre under the sun. So, but it's a reference to the games mostly these days that are of the style that Arcane Studios makes. And so Dishonored, I would kind of put Deus Ex in that category. It's back in 1999 and 2000, we just referred to these games as first-person shooters, maybe even survival horror games with RPG elements in them. And System Shock 2 was really one of the first ones that kind of had incorporated those RPG elements to the extent that game did. And so I believe it was Irrational Games or Looking Glass Studios. I think it was a War Inspector joint. So it has a lot of the, what that game was eventually became the DNA that BioShock was based on. And so I hadn't played System Shock. I knew System Shock was a little different, but I had kind of set myself up for expecting a little bit of the same. And when I'd watched footage of the game, what I'd seen was something that felt like it leaned a little bit more towards the shootery side. So I was like, either way, I'm good. I really like shooters, obviously. And it's fine if it has RPG elements, because that's also kind of what I'm, looking at, like a Prey or things like that. So I bought the game on Steam, jumped into it. I'd also recently been playing Trepang, which I think I talked about maybe 3 weeks ago when I was on last, and I was not happy. The main problem that I had, you guys know I have a real sense of friction that I can encounter with onboarding. And one of the problems with this game is it doesn't explain anything to you. To the extent, like, there are some essential mechanics that I just feel like, there needs to be some kind of basic introduction to. So, for instance, you have in BioShock, you have the same types of puzzles that you have, like, to open safes, to open certain doors, that's similar to, like, the hacking puzzles you would get in BioShock. The issue with the ones presented in System Shock is the manipulatable features right on the board are completely different than they were in BioShock, or at least they look completely different from a graphical perspective. It's a much older game, and you're not talked through any of that, so it's not readily apparent, right, which, how a valve diverts power. There are two different types of valves. What I eventually had to look at was I actually had to look very closely because the graphical style just isn't one where it really kind of jumps off the screen, but I had to look at the flow of power across the screen as I was, rotating the different pieces. So the puzzles are, again, very similar to BioShock, but it doesn't really patently tell you what it is you're trying to do. As far as I can tell, you're trying to get power to different nodes, but there are, on the first puzzle that I encountered, there were 4 nodes. They're all red. It doesn't really tell you what the difference is between one node or the other. Now, another small nit that I had is, path following. So I'd gone to YouTube, looked up, hey, how do you solve puzzles in System Shock? I didn't need to know how to solve the first puzzle. I just needed to know, like, the basic physics of, what each, movable piece was and did. That wasn't really presented to me in the video that I watched. The person just kind of solved the first puzzle for you. But the problem is, and so I kind of went off of that, but then after I sat there for about 30 minutes trying to figure it out, I looked at it and I was like, wait a second, the puzzle that I have is far more complex than the one that person showing in the YouTube video. And so what I finally realized was that I had made a left turn to Albuquerque and somehow wound up at a puzzle board that I wasn't really supposed to be at yet. So that had far more features on it. I didn't have any of the kind of custom things with custom conventions that I am accustomed to in BioShock, such as, gaining a hacking ability or a tool that slows down the flow of power. This, as far as I can tell, these puzzles don't have the same thing like you have in BioShock, where if you don't solve it in enough time, then you get zapped or shocked and you take damage. But regardless, I still had no tools to help solve the puzzle. There was a node over to the left of the puzzle where you could apparently insert some tool or block or widget that, as far as I can tell, would help you solve the puzzle. The other thing is unlike BioShock, a little bit more in the Deus Ex direction, when you encounter combat, you can be significantly outpowered. And so in the outset of the game, you gain like a wrench or a pipe, similar to kind of Half-Life, Half-Life 2. And so I was pretty easily taking on the zombie equivalents with this pipe. But then I picked up a 9mm, and then I started encountering enemies that were utilizing ranged weapons. Well, the problem is should there ever be more than one of these, they're not firing projectiles at you, they're firing some type of arcing energy beam, which never misses. And so, unless you are kind of slowly creeping around the corner and catching them off guard and catching them by surprise, there are also cameras all over the place. Sometimes there are, mobile droids kind of moving around the place that have like shields. So it started very quickly sliding towards the type of game that I don't care for, right? It started sliding very much kind of towards stealth. It started sliding very much towards, you not really being kind of empowered. And so a later approach to the game, I might be in kind of a different mindset, but I just didn't particularly care for System Shock in the initial outgoing. That's another thing. Then, in terms of the game just not explaining anything to you, there's also cyberspace levels, and so you can find these nodes and go into cyberspace, and as far as I can tell, if you go into these cyberspace levels and successfully complete the level, then I think you level up or you get some type of power up. But cyberspace is way different than any kind of convention that you get presented in the real world, and they explain nothing to you. So you go into cyberspace, it's more like you're playing like Descent 3, so it's kind of 6 degrees of freedom. It's anti-grav. You can float in space and rotate right in flight, kind of. There are tunnels that you can proceed down, but if you enter those tunnels before you've unlocked whatever magic who's and what's it is that allows you to proceed down the tunnel, then the tunnel just kind of, there's a vortex in the tunnel, I guess I would call it, and it just turns you around and spits you back out. Well, the way to unlock the tunnels is there are little conduits kind of that run along the ceiling or the walls, and they are colored red when you haven't unlocked it, and then they're colored green. But how you unlock them isn't told to you. At one point, I just fired. I fired at a junction node on the wall that appeared to be where this conduit started, and then it turned green. So, then I followed that path around, and I was able to go into that tunnel. But then the next one I encountered, I fired at the thing, and it did not turn green. So I'm like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do now? So there's probably a little bit of, I need to do some Googling and digging. I need to do some Googling and digging to, surface all of these, conventions and how you're supposed to approach it. And it's an older game, and it came out, and this is a remake, and I get it. However, you guys also know my shtick that I'm like, look, if you want me to play your game, present me the game, tell me everything I need to know about the game in the game. It's not my job to go off and run around and Google and figure all of these things out. If there's, either through Googling or trial and error, if those things don't kind of become, readily apparent to me in the game. So that one really took me off guard. I was really kind of disappointed because this is a remake of a franchise that I have loved from a creator whose work I enjoy, and I just thought I would have just naturally acclimated to it, and that was not the case.
It's interesting that you're saying that you've obviously played the original or played these games before, but now it's like, is it just? Do you think it's just because you're like in a different mindset now with games that it's just not clicking with you, or like you said, I know you said the onboarding thing is kind of difficult sometimes, but what do you think it is?
Well, I think I knew at the time when I played System Shock 2, I knew System Shock 2 was a different game than System Shock. I knew that they had made some changes in that they had incorporated a lot of those RPG elements, and it had kind of moved in the direction of games that we're familiar with now, BioShock and like I said, Deus Ex. So I didn't ever actually play the original System Shock. And so my problem, if you will, is I went into this game expecting this game to be like System Shock 2. Or to at least be, even more of a shooter along the lines of, like I said, Trepang, which is really has the design ethos of Fear, which is neither here nor there. There's nothing that relates the DNA of those two games. It's just that it was a game that I had recently played. I saw some gameplay video that made me think of Trepang, the game I had recently played, and that's what I was expecting. One of the two things. I just wasn't prepared for some entirely wackadoodle thing. My personal feeling, and this is a little arrogant and egotistical, is, yeah, I know I have a personal nit with onboarding, right? However, when I have a personal nit, it's because, in my opinion, the onboarding is bad, right? It's a bad design. Onboarding that I have a problem with, Red Dead Redemption 2, because they make you do things that are not repeatable and involve nothing to do with you progressing down the line, the routes of your skill sets, but they're just things that are done to make the game seem more immersive and make you feel like you're living in the Wild West. And I'm like, no, if you're gonna +1 the range, right, on my utilization of a particular skill, that's what I need to do. I don't need to bang a wagon wheel, right, on a stagecoach when that's not a repeatable skill and it adds nothing, right, to my skill set. Monster Hunter World, I had problems with that onboarding because the guy literally walks you around to every physical instance of the store when you get to the first hub world. And I'm like, but you can't buy anything in the store at that point because you have no money. That's a bad onboarding. I'm like, no, you could have just told me that, right? Or just presented me a map and had like a mouse over every time like I scrolled around the screen. So this is an instance of, of bad onboarding, and one that probably heavily leans on an expectation that, people coming to the game are familiar with the original. But I'm like, 20, 24, 25 years. I mean, I think the original System Shock was maybe 1996 or 97. So, 26 years of gap time or space time, that's a bit of a big reach, right, to expect somebody to have gained that familiarity and gone back before they tried this one out. Any other questions on System Shock Tau?
No, not right now. Yeah, 94 was, I think, the original game.
Okay, very cool. Let's talk about something a little more pleasant. I always have to. And so I have been playing Formula One F1 23 on PC, and so this has been a thoroughly pleasant experience. This is me in the green car, jumping from P5 where I qualified, and you'll see me momentarily make a breakout move here on positions 2 and 3 to jump into P2 behind Lewis Hamilton. I'm playing campaigns of this game right now on Xbox and on PC. This time I hooked up my Thrustmaster TMX wheel, which was the wheel. I already had a Thrustmaster T300 RS, I think is the title of it. This is me using my Thrustmaster TMX wheel, and so it's a slightly less expensive wheel. It is the one that's compatible with both PC and Xbox versus my other one, which is compatible with PC and PlayStation 5. I have played F1, definitely F1 23, and most F1s predominantly with controller, and with where I am now, if I hold a controller in my hands for an extended period of time, my hands start to cramp up. In racing games, I could play like a third person shooter or a shooter, for an unlimited amount of time. But for some reason, racing games, maybe because I'm holding onto the controller, very tightly, I'm not sure. But my hands cramp up. With the racing wheel, that doesn't happen, and I'm realizing now that in some cases, and I'm not gonna start a petition or scream things at Phil Spencer or Herman Holst about accessibility, but I'm like, for me, I'm realizing now that games having HOTAS support for flight control systems, and also having wheel and pedal support are really kind of an accessibility issue for me. Like, they allow me to play racing games. Here the wheel felt so great that I bumped up because in F1 you can change the session length for a race weekend, so you can my practice sessions are already set in an hour. Qualifying I have set in one shot because I don't want to be bothered with qualifying, running 5, 10, 11 laps. I'm like, look, after the practice sessions, I either know their track or I don't. Just, give me the exam for one lap. For the race length, I normally set it, I think there's a choice to set it like 35%. So like on a 50 or 60 something lap race, I might, I've been playing around with, race lengths of anywhere between like 12, maybe 15, 17, 18 laps. Even then, like about lap 12, like my left hand especially is shot, and I don't, and the big thing is I don't have as much sensitivity in the controls. You can imagine playing a racing game, but in particular a racing game like Formula One, where you are running around the track at speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour, not having razor sharp awareness in sensitivity of your left trigger finger and where of your right trigger of your left trigger finger when I use trail braking a lot, and then also on the right trigger where I'm applying acceleration. When you have things like your tires start falling off, right, in grip as you're going along the race. makes things really difficult. But with the racing wheel, I bumped race session up to like 50%. So for a 50 lap race, I run 25 laps, which gives me, allows me time to put in pit stops and, which incorporates even more immersion into the game and things like that. So it was a really awesome experience. I've played with racing wheels mostly in things like Forza and Dirt, where it is just like you're like whipping the wheel around, and it's uneven surfaces, and you're just kind of getting your butt kicked right while you're using the wheel. I just haven't played it. I don't know that I've ever hooked up my wheel and pedals with a Formula One game, and I've heard the chatter and seen the online about like just how wheel and pedals work better for different games. I have used my wheel and pedals with Assetto Corsa. But it was just the feel was amazing, and how intuitive it made me feel, how much more akin it was to feeling like driving a real car, was just, immaculate, like off the charts. So, I already, support very well Codemasters in my purchase of F1 every single year, but, that experience actually makes me hungrier, like, to play the game, like, even more. I've spent probably 8 or 9 hours in Formula One this weekend, playing on, like I said, playing on PC, going through that rack. And even a few weeks ago when I talked about playing F123 when it launched this year, I mentioned how I don't like that circuit at Saudi Arabia, which is a city circuit, and so it's horrifically punishing if you get distracted for 1 second and wind up bumping a wall, right, and taking wing damage. And I'm just horrible at Monte Carlo every single year. Like I just basically, like, whenever I get Monte Carlo, I just like, okay, I'm going to come in last in this race. Like, just go ahead and write this one off. And I'm also not a huge fan of Azerbaijan and Baku, which is also a city circuit, but the way I was taking and approaching corners, and the confidence I felt going into the corner, and the willingness to take on the risk, right, and how close I was hugging walls, right, when I was coming off some of the low speed turns. Again, it was just just an amazingly different experience than playing with controller. So, having a ton of fun with that one, and looking to, I always comment about how I don't play the F1 series enough when I do buy it every year, but I will will definitely be digging into it more time this year with the wheel and pedals. And I should mention so now I have the wheel and pedals, but I also invested this year in a racing stand. So this is me also playing with the wheel on an H-frame. So it was a stand by a company called Dewingus, and so it's just awesome. And the stand folds up, and I don't have to it folds up with the wheel and pedals on it, so I don't have to take them off. I just unscrew them, fold it down, and like stick it in a corner in my game room. So pretty awesome.
So before you just had it like clamped to your desk, or the wheel at least, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So, and what that meant was what I've historically normally done, and I've kept my wheel and pedals, just like I did with VR headsets, which again is another reason why I don't get into VR as much as I might otherwise. My studio is not set up for me to have that stuff out and connected like all the time, and so my wheel and pedals have historically kind of been stuffed in one of these closets behind me, and I would drag them out, I would, bolt them to the desk, I would hook them up to the PC. These wheel and pedals require power, and they have their own, power supplies, so it has to go to an external power source. And then I play the game, and then I take them down and I put them back in the closet. So it's a whole, spectacle. So having them on the racing stand now and just being able to fold it up and put it in a corner, it's just a heck of a lot more convenient and a heck of a lot easier. But yeah, and not only that, I was bolting it to the desk, which has, my monitors on it. And, if I'm, like now I'm drinking coffee, like you can't have coffee in a coffee cup holder, right? When you've got one of those things bolted to the desk, it's a harrowing experience with your monitor flapping all around and stuff. So I'm much, it's kind of one of those things where, with tech or with games, you buy a peripheral and you're like, oh my god, this is such a incredibly different experience. I should have just spent the money and done this ages ago. And that's kind of what I feel like with the racing wheel instead.
Nice.
All right, well, that wraps up our GX segment. Let's head over to segment 2, going into the news. At the top of the order, the first story we have is Callisto Protocol developer Striking Distance suffers over 30 layoffs. So this story from Game Informer starts off, and I quote, Striking Distance Studios, the studio behind last year's action horror title The Callisto Protocol, has suffered layoffs. It's been confirmed via IGN that 32 employees have been let go from the studio. These include production coordinator Sebastian Marlowe, associate producer Nora Falcon, senior environment artist Matthew Smith, and visual effects artist Matt Christopherson. A spokesperson for Krafton, Striking Distance's parent company, gave the following statement to IGN. Striking Distance Studios and Krafton have implemented strategic changes that realign the studio's properties to better position its current and future projects for success. Unfortunately, these changes have impacted 32 employees. Honoring the invaluable contributions of each departing team member with material support in the form of outplacement services and meaningful severance packages is our top priority during this difficult moment. So, the tail of the tape of this is obviously these guys came out of EA. Was this? I can't remember the name of the studio that was at EA, but obviously the guys who did the crew that did Dead Space, or at least a number of them, they went off and created this title named Callisto Protocol. My personal optics on this is, I've been engaged with numerous arguments over the last year and a half, while the ATVI acquisition was going on, and one of the popular opinions out there is that, hey, there's no worry about industry consolidation. Look at all these developers. Whenever they leave a big publisher, they just go and open a new studio, and there's yet another AAA developers. And I have said over and over and over again, a bajillion times, I've said, how many of those studios open actually work on another AAA game? Because a lot of them will work on a AA game or an indie game. How many of them work on a AAA game and then actually publish that game be successful, achieve decent sales numbers, and then that studio rolls on to a second project? My point being that they actually maintain themselves as a constituted going concern. Or do they publish their game, or do they cancel their game and wind up dissolving the company? Does the game wind out coming out broken or having significant shortfalls? In the instances where they are successful, they are very often just reacquired and kind of reassimilated back into the larger big corporation structure. Or you have things like this, right? Which is the game came out, the game actually achieved critical acclaim, but with the state of the industry and the way costs are rising, the studio still suffers a hit. The game achieved critical acclaim, but as far as we can tell, it didn't sell bonkers numbers. And so here they are financially impacted by, what unfortunately is kind of this a state and a dynamic in the industry, partially caused by us as consumers, where if a game doesn't sell bonga, then it's looked at as not successful. And so, I personally haven't bought into this notion that, there's thousands of developers, thousands of developer companies. It's no big deal. Consolidation's not a problem, because these are the type of things that we wind up seeing. Tao, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about it before, about like kind of these, I forgot what we call them, like mid-tier studios, like Volition and all that, where there's a ton of them obviously back in the day, but now it's just like few and far between. Like you see this kind of happening all the time. Like I said, like they release a game or two, if they're lucky, 2 games, if not more. And then, they kind of shutter away or get bought up by somebody. Maybe they have like a decent, a decent game or two. And then, they just get bought up anyways by somebody else. And, they kind of just go away. So they're gobbled up by some, Activision, well, I would say Ubisoft, because Ubisoft doesn't really seem to buy studios, I don't think. Not that often. At least not that I remember hearing. But, they just get bought up and, they're kind of gone. They're absorbed into the bigger machine, if you will.
All right, let's go on to our second story. This story over on PC Gamer. Baldur's Gate 3 enters top 10 all-time peak Steam games, knocking Apex Legends out. This has been real barn burner of a story, just kind of the amazing apogee that Baldur's Gate has achieved out of the gate, no pun intended. And one would argue that maybe this is the success you can see when you do early access. My personal argument would be this is Larian Studios, which has been doing absolutely amazing work for several years, often unnoticed by the larger gaming community because they make these kind of party style RPG games that are kind of very akin to the way Baldur's Gate 2, Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2 were, as well as Neverwinter Nights and what's the other one, and Icewind Dale. So it was really a great fit for them based on kind of what they've done with the Divinity series. But the story by Jonathan Bolding starts off, and I quote, "Launch weekend has seen Baldur's Gate 3 break into the top 10 all-time concurrent player counts on Steam with 712,281 players here on August 5th, 2023, at once, according to SteamDB. That huge peak puts it above Goose Goose Duck, taking the 9th most played spot, and pushing Apex Legends in its 624k peak into the 11th spot. The you must be this tall to ride bar for the top 10 is now firmly fixed at a peak of over 700k. So yeah, I mean, this has been great. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Of course, the game has launched on PC in August. It launches on PlayStation 5 next month. It has not launched on Xbox Series X, and we don't know when that's going to happen. I think the one key reason that I've seen that the developer has indicated they're having problems getting it onto Xbox is because there are resource limitations with the Xbox Series S that preclude co-op, I believe split screen co-op, I think, and Microsoft has a parity clause where you are not able to deploy a game on the Xbox Series S that is just entirely missing a function or a feature of the Xbox Series X game. So you can deploy a game on Xbox Series S that doesn't run as well, but you can't just leave out an entire mode on the Xbox Series S, is my understanding. So Tao, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of surprised how big this is. I've seen a lot of people talking about this on different Discord servers and stuff, and I kind of looked into it and I was like, oh man, it's really involved. The menu screen at the bottom of the screen is like, whoa. So nothing, not that I'm saying it's a bad game or anything, but just not for me. But it's good that but like you said, obviously the studio's been doing these kind of games, so I mean it's not a big shock. So but it looks pretty. It looks really pretty. The gameplay I've seen, especially seems a lot to be cutscenes too, or I don't know if it's it might be even interwoven when you're playing, but it just seems like I'm flipping through gameplay and it's just all people talking and people talking and people talking. All right, well, it's fine, but just not something I want to play right now. So, have you played either of the previous ones?
So I've played a good chunk of Divinity, and I can't keep straight in my head. I played multiple games of the Divinity series. I can't keep straight in my head which ones, what memory in my head goes along with which specific title from Larian Studios, because they've got the most ridiculous naming scheme. There's Divinity, there's Divinity Original Sin, there's Divinity 2, I think there's Divinity Original Sin 2, there's Divinity Original Sin 2 Definitive Edition, but they're great games. I've always enjoyed them. But again, I was kind of raised and dyed in the wool of those Baldur's Gate 2, Icewind Dale, D&D second edition style games. I played Icewind Dale and Icewind Dale 2 and the expansion. I think the first one had an expansion, and the expansion with a buddy of mine playing co-op, right? So I just spent he and I just spent 20 40 hours right in that world of I can't remember which. There's a specific name label to those, the rules edition or the realm that takes place in from the D&D rules. Right now I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean it's definitely a style of game, and they're definitely a style of games that that speak to a certain player base, right? So, I would probably think, your your Witcher 3 might be a little too far in kind of the action direction. Yeah, I would actually say I haven't played Cyberpunk, so I don't know how it is, but like it's definitely pointed at people who love depth of detail and pulling things apart and understanding deep systems and systems of subsystems and systems of systems kind of approach. It's meant for the type of person. Witcher 3 springs to mind because there are friends I have and people that I know that are like, they played The Witcher 3, they played all of its expansions, they play Skyrim, and they fixate on one game and they spend 200, 300, 400 hours in it, right, in an RPG game, and they're not interested in playing anything else, and quite often, right, the way their approach was, I'm going to play Witcher 3 and keep playing Witcher 3 and all the expansions until Cyberpunk comes out, right? And then it's like, I don't want to play anything else until Cyberpunk. And so, it's meant for that type of gamer. So, it's impressive that it has as much traction as it does right out of the gate. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes on. Our next story, make sure I have this right. This one over on DSO Gaming by John Papadopoulos. Respawn focuses on making more money instead of improving the performance of Star Wars Jedi Survivor. The story begins during its latest earnings briefing. Electronic Arts revealed that Respawn is currently focusing on porting Star Wars Jedi Survivor to old-gen consoles instead of improving its performance and optimization on current-gen platforms. I think that's a typo. Instead of fixing and improving the current-gen version, Respawn has decided to milk the cow as much as possible. Tao, your opinions on this? I can't remember if you've played Star Wars Jedi Survivor yet.
No, I have not. I have not played it yet. So, I'm wondering though, like if this is coming up above them, like hey, just get the old, get going on the old consoles too. Obviously, there's like a ton of old consoles that are still out there, so they want to get that out there instead of it doesn't make any sense though. I mean, if you think about it, this probably one of the bigger games that came out this year, and other than some of the PC obviously issues that they had, or just general issues that they had pretty favorable reviews. So it's just interesting that they wouldn't, or maybe that's why. Like, okay, well, we already sold like a crap ton of them, so what's the point of going back and fixing the little things, I'll put that in quotes, that are issues currently. So it stinks. Like, they should try to, you look at all these other companies that, when people kind of go up in arms about stuff that's happening with their games, they do try to fix it, and eventually maybe it will, even if it's months, maybe in a year or a year or so afterwards. But it seems like they're just kind of like, all right, well, just keep going. So on to the next one, I suppose. Also, I'm sure they're already focusing on that too.
Well, the thing that bugs me about this, and I have Star Wars Jedi Survivor for PlayStation 5, like the game still doesn't look good when you run it in performance mode. To the extent where, well, I'm sorry, in quality mode. To the extent where I say, if you're playing that game on PlayStation 5, I'm like, I don't see any point in running in quality mode. You're fortunate if you get 60 frames per second in performance mode, and the game doesn't look that much better if you play it in quality mode. So there are still problems with how the game plays and performs on current gen consoles. And this article mentions that, as of their last patch, on PC, the game still doesn't support DLSS 2. What's really crazy for me is we're going to put the effort into deploying it on the Xbox One when the Xbox One was outsold 2-1 last generation. So we're doing this for, what ostensibly may have been 50 or 60 million people, probably almost, a significant number of whom have turned their Xbox One over for the Xbox Series X. So who are we making this for? For the PlayStation 4, that makes sense to me, right? There's tons of those things still running around, and they're still being sold. But the decision to divert resources to put it on the Xbox One, makes, out of all of this, makes, the least sense to me. It's a problem for me that a studio of the caliber of Respawn, first of all, that it put the game out in the state that it was in the first place. This isn't, this isn't, this isn't some bargain basement Activision studio, right? Like who's like the one studio who wasn't doing Call of Duty, right? Putting a game out, right? This is Respawn. This is the legacy of Vince Zampella. This is the legacy of Infinity Ward, in fact. The people who put Call of Duty on the map. So I really don't understand. And like you said, right, the thing that's problematic in kind of what's going on with this game is this is a game that's been in, come out of some people's mouths as being in the Game of the Year discussion. And I'm like, I don't, and I get that gameplay can surmount performance, but in my head, there's a certain floor. And when you don't meet that, in my mind, you don't get to have your name included in the Game of the Year discussion. I mean, obviously on this channel, our first problem is we don't think there should be any Game of the Year discussion until December, and I stand by and stick by that. But I continue with this hypothesis that we're in this really, really weird state in the gaming industry where, at this point with console hardware, what we're normally accustomed to seeing is better and better games coming out that take, as the developers hit learning curve and they become smarter and more experienced about like tricks and efficiencies and things that they can do to make better and better games. We're not really approaching that. We're not really on that trajectory, right? We're not really on a trajectory that yielded things like Vector Man at the end of the Sega Genesis life cycle. We're not on the trajectory of things that yielded things like, The Last of Us 2 and Ghost of Tsushima at the end of the PlayStation 4 life cycle. Maybe we'll get there, but the total exponential up curve that has to be achieved in what is quickly approaching the halfway point of the life cycle to the end is significantly sharper than it's historically been. And then we have problems on PC as well, and that's the really disconcerting thing, where there seems to be this contention between the hardware people and the software people, with the software people saying, we need more RAM, we need more VRAM, we need more VRAM. Between hardware and the corporations not putting those things on cards. But then I'm like, okay, but the software side of the house can't just dig its roots in, right, and refuse to budge and like keep making games that can't perform right on the hardware that's available today. So, and like I said, when this impacts like smaller tier developers, I'm like, oh, okay, that's, that happens. But when it hits somebody like Respawn and Respawn doesn't do anything about it, that's a problem. And what this smells like to me is, remember on the Xbox 360 when DICE would put out a Battlefield game, and in particular, I think it was like Battlefield 2 that came out, and the voice comms were just broken. Like, you would be in a multiplayer match, and voice comms would just go down. And at the time, there was no party chat, so you would just be out of comms for the remainder of an entire match, unable to coordinate with anyone. And DICE never fixed that. I'm like, this is the biggest multiplayer game that like your company, your studio is going to put on the platform right now. It has a huge legacy behind it, and you have this type of thing, and you're just not going to address it or fix it. So this is kind of reminding me of that type of behavior, from EA. Anything else on that article, Tal?
No, I just kind of laughing at his last paragraph where he says, he says that's that the gamers should be voting with their wallets, plain and simple. And since the game sold well, I guess PC and console games deserve the way they were treated. So I was like, kind of. I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with that. So it's kind of a little bit more harsh, maybe than I said, the way I said it, or the way he's saying it than what I said. But it's kind of the truth.
Yeah, and I say the same thing too. I mean, I bought the PlayStation 5 version in the thoughts and hopes that, again, it was Respawn and that they would, rise to the occasion, right? And there would be patches and we would see game performance improve. But it looks, I mean, particularly, the rubric that I use on that game is fire effects and water effects. And when I look at them and they're like not up to snuff with games that are put out by smaller studios, that have a smaller budget, like that's the indication of failure to me. And sure, like the game may be fun and it's got a ton of lore and it's a licensed property and people love Star Wars. I often dislike how certain games get like the are graded on a curve because they're an IP that people love. So yeah, I mean, it should have been better overall. Next story we're going to talk about is Xbox at Gamescom 2023. This news article over on Xbox Wire by Danielle Partis. We're excited to meet Xbox players at Gamescom in Cologne, Germany this August with fan experiences that are bigger and better than ever. It's the fans that make Gamescom the biggest gaming event in the world, and we're thrilled to greet you this year with the largest booth we've ever had at Gamescom. Attendees will be able to experience a huge amount of exciting new games coming to Xbox PC and Game Pass with fantastic photo opportunities and the return of Xbox Fan Fest. It goes on to talk about things that are at the Xbox booth, things that I was very happy to hear are going to be in the Xbox booth. Stalker 2, obviously that team under a vast amount of duress as they've been going through, Russia's war on the Ukraine. There was one other, in Armored Core 6, I was, happy to hear that there's going to be a booth where apparently there's going to be some hands-on playtime of that. Gamescom will be going down just days before that game launches, so it'll be good to hear some buzz and people's and the media's experiences playing that. CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty will also be there, as well as something from Quantic Dreams called Under the Waves. I'm not even sure exactly what that is, and Persona 5 Tactica as well. Tao, your thoughts on the Gamescom show coming up?
Yeah, it seems pretty good. There's a couple of other ID Xbox notables. The Steam World build and Lightyear Frontier look pretty interesting from what I'd seen previously. I never played any of the other Steam Worlds, but this one kind of looks kind of cool. So I figured, hey, what the heck? The Quantum Dream one, I don't, because they're the ones that do kind of like the adventure games, right? On pretty much PS exclusives.
They're another company that does these things I would call as these immersive sims. So they did, and they have previously done, I thought most of their work has been PlayStation associated. So yeah, and again, I mean, maybe this is industry information I should be more familiar with, but they're not games that I've played. But they did Heavy Rain, and then what was the one with Bobby Drake, Iceman from the X-Men movies as like the main guy. It was the game that was on Xbox that there's a big controversy about because they like pulled it off Xbox and they put it back on recently or whatever.
Oh, was that Quantic Dream or was that not Remedy?
I think that's. I thought it was Quantic. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that was Remedy.
Yeah.
But and then they did the other big game that they did was
that Detroit Become Human? Was that?
Yes, Detroit Become Human. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I never played those games, just because I didn't have PlayStation 4, 3, I think, all the way back from 3. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. I don't remember them breaking away from PS or. I mean, I don't think they were ever owned by them, but obviously they had some kind of partnership.
Yeah.
So it's interesting they got something coming out.
Yeah, you're right. That game was by Remedy. I thought it was by Quantic Dream. But yeah, Detroit Human, Beyond Two Souls, and Heavy Rain were kind of the big ones that they're known for. They've done some other games, but that's the big one. Any other thoughts on Gamescom?
No.
Okay, well, let me talk about the things that I'm not happy about at Gamescom. Number one, that leading statement that this is our biggest booth ever at Gamescom. Again, I've had what is now going on a year and 2 months of dissatisfaction with just kind of the messaging that comes from Xbox and how they've kind of handled PR and how they've handled marketing. And one of my issues with the statement is, again, it kind of speaks to me the types of things that Xbox is focused on, which are not the things that kind of deliver gamer satisfaction, consumer satisfaction to me. I don't care how large your booth is at Gamescom, right? What I care about is I care about you making dates and delivering content that I want and content that made me an Xbox fan way back in the day, right? As Xbox was like my replacement for Sega, right? When Sega left the hardware business. And so one of the things that concerns me, although, there have been, different opinions that Starfield is not playable at Gamescom. And as far as I can tell, I've seen varying stories running around, but as far as I can tell, as far as this map is concerned, and kind of as far as kind of the ad copy, because it talks about Forza Motorsport being at a booth where there's a theater presentation. Forza Motorsport is also not playable at Gamescom. Now, maybe new information has come out. I'm not absolutely certain. I've seen some fans claim that it is. I don't really go off of, fan-based information. I'm looking for, corroborated information from the corporation. I haven't seen that yet. Those things to me are bothersome. And what I don't know about Starfield is, if it's not going to be playable at Gamescom, okay, it's, weeks. It's a week before that game launches when Gamescom is going down. What I also don't know, because I haven't heard, is what the plan is to get Starfield in the hands of the media to start reviews. And so, I don't know. I'm waiting for this to hear the signal that this isn't heading down the path of review copies getting to the media at the last minute. And, the game not being playable at Gamescom would seem to run a parallel with that. So I don't know if the plan is review copies are going out and the media is getting a hold of them, and then therefore there's no need to have it in a playable state at Gamescom for the media to put their hands on, or if there's something else going on. And I would just like to hear what that plan is. And again, when I talk about, consistency with Xbox messaging and marketing, I feel like they're in a position where that is the type of thing that I point to, that I say that's a thing that you could do to be transparent and instill confidence in your consumer base, your player base, that's lost confidence in you. Now, part of my problem with Xbox is it seems like they continuously focus on catering only to the people who still have their confidence, and that's great, but that pool continues to dwindle and get smaller and smaller all the time. And I'm like, as you're being outpaced, right, by other competitors in the industry, I would just start thinking that you would start focusing on doing things right for the people whose confidence has been shaken, and I don't see that. It's also concerning if Forza Motorsport is not playable, as I believe that it is. That's also concerning that game, comes out 6 weeks after Gamescom-ish, sometime along that timeline, and Forza Motorsport has been a game that has historically been playable, at various venues, but we haven't seen so much as somebody on a stage with a controller in their hand, right? Whereas in past years when Forza launched, we've seen people on a stage with a controller in their hand like a year before the game launched, right? So I don't know. We'll see how things go, but again, it hasn't set me in a leaning forward in my seat, kind of mode with regards to the big games that are supposed to come out from Xbox this fall. We had another Xbox story, Tao, that you had picked up on.
Yeah, this is from Game Industry Biz from Sophia McAvoy, I believe. Sorry, we have Microsoft is going to start selling, or I think has already started selling, replacement parts for Xbox controllers. Are basically kits that you can buy from their repair and replacement parts website, and you can follow. And this is for the as they say in the article, for the technically inclined consumers out there who want to fix their controllers. Now, I think it's for. I was trying to see it before, so it's for the standard and Elite Xbox Series 2 controllers right now. So you can get replacement analog sticks, buttons, triggers, and printed circuit board assembly. So you could pretty much, sounds like you pretty much replace anything on the controller that you're having an issue with. But you'll be able to purchase these, and then they'll have guides that you can go through on Xbox support the Xbox support YouTube channel. So basically a tutorial that you can follow through and follow the directions. So, I mean, I guess that's good. I haven't really had any issues with my controllers other than there's one controller. It was actually a Halo controller from the old Xbox One, I believe, that I had an issue with some drift on one of the sticks. But other than that, I don't think I've ever really had any issues. I have some cosmetic issues with the my Elite, the first gen Elite controller that I currently have. Just like the rubbering on the one side is starting to come off, so it's kind of flapping off. But other than that, I mean, I haven't had any issues with the buttons or the controllers or the sticks or their shoulder buttons or anything like that. So I just find it kind of weird that I guess they're starting to do this. Like and I know in the article too they mentioned that there was a shareholder resolution filed by As You Know It that they encourage Microsoft to start expanding their consumer options for repairs. So I guess, and they're supposed to do that. Microsoft pledged to do that by the end of 2022. Obviously, it's a little bit later, 2023, but now they're starting to give out these sell these repair kits. So, I mean, I guess that's good. Sometimes you get like that one controller that you really love, that you really like, that you want to, hopefully keep forever. Something might happen to it, so you can go and buy a repair kit now. I don't know what you think about this article or just kind of what's going on with this.
I mean, I think it's a consumer-friendly move. I mean, I personally think from a consumer demographic that my belief has always been that although it doesn't necessarily make sense based on the type of content they put out, that I've always suspected that more Xbox gamers also own PCs than PlayStation gamers. And therefore, maybe the Xbox community, or at least the player base, would have that lean in that direction and have that type of acumen to want to monkey around with a controller. I was kind of laughing when you said I've never had any problem with the controllers, because Tao, you and I both know part of the reason we don't have problems with controllers is because we have so many, and you and I both have this mentality that we feel obligated to actually use all of them, and so we rotate.
Well, so I mentioned that at the end, but it was an extra thought. Yeah, I got like a whole bunch of controllers right here behind my monitor. So
yeah, I think I'm up to like 12 Xbox controllers or something along those lines, and so I mean, and this is my thinking that I wanted to ask you, if you had a problem with a controller, would you buy a repair kit or would you just buy a new controller?
I mean, honestly, I'd probably just buy the controller because I really don't have the time to sit there and pull apart one of these things. And I'm assuming you need like a special tool, because I don't think they're like just screwed in like with normal screws and stuff. So I'd probably just buy a new controller to be honest, completely honest with you. I know a lot of people do that. They do not just for repairs, but they do customization and stuff. So they'll pull apart the whole thing and paint stuff or just do different stuff. Maybe put different internal stuff inside to make it last a little bit longer. But like it just doesn't appeal to me. So I'll just buy the new controller.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if Microsoft was able to fund this in a way that it doesn't hurt them or their bottom line, fine. I question expending a ton of financial resources to make something like this happen because, like I said, I mean, Xbox has so many options for personalizing your controller, and they make such a deal out of, the marketability of, design labs and all that. And, part of this is, the Series 2 Elite controller has gotten some knocks about its reliability, and so this makes sense from that perspective. But then I think one of the things I'd be digging into is, how does this impact your warranty if you choose to go down that path instead of just sending the thing in. So I don't know. Yeah. It's neat. It gives people options, so that's great. It doesn't personally like do anything for me because I'm like you. If I had a bad controller, I would just walk myself over to the Design Labs webpage and customize another one and have it shipped.
And I think just like the standard like Xbox controller, like black, or I'm assuming maybe the white one too. I mean, those are usually pretty cheap. You usually get them for like $50, I think, on sale at most places, maybe even 40. A lot of the ones I have are usually like special edition ones, or like I have a couple of. Well, I only have one Design Lab ones, and then I had bought one for my son too because I customized one for him for like Christmas or something, or his birthday. So, stuff like that. But most of the time it's just like a special one. Like, I'll admit, I do have the Starfield one. I haven't opened it yet because I'm waiting until the game comes out. I'll use it on then. But other than that, I think that was the last one I had bought was the Starfield one. So I had got that I think a month ago.
Okay. Well, at least I will give you the respect for not opening it because people who bought the controller, I'm like, why are you like? It makes no sense to buy the controller before the game comes out. You know,
Yeah,
but
like I didn't want to touch it.
I have total respect for you in keeping it in the package. So I have the Constellation Edition pre-ordered. I am, even though, like I said, Xbox marketing continues to be a thorn in my side, but I am excited, right, to see the game actually, come out. I will say that I am very confident that the game is coming out on time because, for my Amazon pre-order, it was originally tagged as being delivered on the 6th of September, which was making me angry because I'm like, the whole reason that I pre-ordered it was so I could get the early access. And like, if you're not giving it to me until the early access is over, that makes no sense. I did see Amazon reported to me, not just of their own volition, but because they had gotten confirmation from the manufacturer or the vendor or the provider or whatever, that the game would be shipping on August 31st so that I get it on September 1st. So what that tells me is that somewhere in the account rep, chain of command, right, the secret handshake went down between Microsoft and Amazon saying, yay, verily, right, these things are going to be ready to ship on the date. So looking forward to the end of this month. Let's wrap up the news segment by talking about sales. First story entering into that discussion over on Games Radar by Hope Bellingham. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has already sold 2/3 of what Breath of the Wild managed in 6 years. The article starts, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has already sold 2/3 of what Breath of the... Well, I don't know, despite releasing just a few months ago. As highlighted by Twitter user Zelda Universe using figures from Nintendo's Q1 financial results, Tears of the Kingdom is already quickly catching up to its predecessor's sales figures, reaching 18.51 million units sold as of June 30th, 2023. For context, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is currently sitting at 30.65 million units sold as of the same date. The only difference is Breath of the Wild was released in March 2017 and Tears of the Kingdom in May 2023. So after only being on the market for 2 months, going on 3, it has already sold 18 million units. Tao, you're a big Nintendo Switch person. Have you picked up Tears of the Kingdom?
No, probably I'll wait on it. I never even beat Breath of the Wild, so and just my mentality. I usually have to beat since this is a direct sequel. I would have to beat the original one before I can pick up the new one. But no, I've heard a lot of good things about it, so I mean, it seems to be well deserved. All the accolades.
Yep. So Nintendo games, that have historically outsold Tears of the Kingdom so far include Super Mario Party at 19.39 million, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet at 22.6, Pokemon Sword and Shield at 25.9, Super Mario Odyssey at 26.4, and Super Mario Brothers Ultimate at 31.7. The only game on this list that I have personally bought was Super Mario Odyssey, so I'm part of the 26.4 million. And so, and then I think the top 2 selling Nintendo games of all time are Animal Crossing's New Horizons at 42.8 million and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 55.5. So, but it's good. There's lots of Nintendo franchises that, despite their critical acclaim, actually don't sell like super big numbers, and that's part of the reason why you don't see them getting made. Sometimes they're just very popular Nintendo franchises that were like, why haven't they revisited that? Why haven't they redone that? Well, because their sales numbers actually aren't bad, but they're also not like the bonga numbers that we see from some of these other IPs. So Nintendo doesn't put the money in that direction. That is a good entrance point for us to segue over to your story of overall sales, Tal. So why don't you talk us through that?
Yeah, so U.S. game revenue sees a 9% jump in for the month of June. This is from, once again, Game Industry Biz and from Jeffrey Rousseau. During June, U.S. consumer spending games hit $4.7 billion, a 9% increase year over year, according to the newest Circana, I believe is how you say it, data. Software reached $4 billion during the month, up 7% compared to last year's. Excuse me. Spending on gaming hardware saw a 22% year-over-year bump as it amassed $454 million. And this is the highest video games hardware spend for a June month since $617 million reached in June of 2008, which I believe was the year after the big 2007, game releases and stuff that we always hear about. Sony's PlayStation 5 was top selling system for units and dollars, and then they're also their PlayStation 5 DualSense Edge wireless controller was the top selling peripherals. A bunch of new games obviously came out this past month, so we'll go through just the top 10. There's a top 20, but the first 3 are brand new entries into the charts here. Diablo 4, number 1. Final Fantasy, number 16, number 2. Street Fighter 6, number 3. And Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, number 4. Hogwarts Legacy, still up there, number 5. So is Modern Warfare 2, Call of Duty 6, number 6, I should say, in the ranking. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, we just talked about, number 7. MLB The Show, 23, number 8, still going strong. 2 Spider-Mans coming in at 9 and 10. Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales at number 9, and Marvel Spider-Man number 10. And kind of interesting because Miles Morales was at 31. It's come back up to 9, and then just regular Spider-Man title was 24 last month. So I don't know. It's a big sale, or maybe because Spider-Verse, probably a combination of the both of the two. So those rounded up to top 10. And then, of course, you had your Mario Karts and Minecrafts and Elden Scrolls rounding out the top 20. God of War. So kind of some stuff there. I'm still a little bit surprised. I mean, Hogwarts Legacy, I'm still surprised it's still selling so well. I mean, it is a great game. I really do love it, but I'm surprised it's still in the top 5. So it's nice to see. And MLB The Show, of course, it's baseball. We're starting to wind down the season, I believe, next couple months. So that's still going strong. Any notables here for you, or anything in the finances in general?
Yeah, I mean, a number of surprises. First thing I'll mention, not a surprise is PlayStation 5 selling well in that, now apparently Sony is so confident in how the console is selling that they've actually done kind of a soft price cut with some retailers now this weekend selling the PlayStation 5 at a $50 discount. Xbox has done cuts to the Xbox Series S at certain points, and to sell it below MSRP. So it's interesting to see PlayStation doing that. It looks like we're headed for what could be a significant kind of price war amongst the two consoles going into the holiday season. I was very surprised by the DualSense Edge remaining consistent. If you remember when we talked about sales figures last time, the DualSense Edge was also still the top selling peripheral at the time. So I was surprised for it to do those same numbers or hold on to that spot 2 months in a row. The first time was an anomaly. Twice is a trend. And game titles here, Diablo 4, it's what's funny is the dichotomy of like the whys, the causality behind why games are in the list. This said May through June. Actually, I think that's a typo. I think this is May 28th through July 1st, maybe. So Diablo 4 is kind of representative of what happens when you take an IP like Diablo and put it on console and PC at the same time. By the same token, Final Fantasy 16 being number 2 shows what happens when you make a game a platform exclusive and only deploy it on the PlayStation 5. So Street Fighter 6 in at number 3. That's super impressive for Street Fighter, which hasn't previously done really huge numbers. There's a bit of faux-ness in here. It being bigger than Legend of Zelda, but of course this is because Nintendo doesn't report digital sales. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 showing a nostalgic resurgence because it's saying Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I guess now I have to wonder whether or not that's a typo, and they actually mean Modern Warfare II, because the 2022 Modern Warfare 2 is Roman numeral 2. Modern Warfare 2 is the thing that got a remaster that Activision Blizzard sells. That was the old, I don't know what it was, 2010 release or something like that. So I don't actually know which Modern Warfare 2 that is. Jedi Survivor, we just talked about, right? Poor performance, not that great graphically, and here it is sitting at number 7, much like Gotham Knights was hung out at spot number 17 for annual sales for 2022, despite the fact that Gotham Knights maybe wasn't that great a game. You already mentioned the kind of resurgence of the Spider-Man games with Spider-Man 2 coming out here. And good to see Dead Island 2 hanging in there, for the Embracer Group, who hasn't had a great, showing in the news cycle, recently. my game, F123, making the big jump up there to number 15. Got to be happy about that. Yeah, those are the ones that kind of stick out to me as being significant and kind of standing out in that list. Any other comments on that, Tal, before we go into the bottom 10 minutes of the show?
Nope. Good to go.
All right, let's go ahead and put the rapid fire on and get through our GX experience cleanup. Tal, you lead that off with a discussion of Rust that you've been playing recently with a family member.
Yeah, so I've been, I mentioned this before, I've been playing Rust with my son, once again, this past week. Actually, he's been playing pretty religiously the last few weeks. And I've been off and on with him, but I played a good bit with him a lot more this past week. And also, I finally kind of wrapped my head around like the building in this game, because it's a little weird. There's kind of 2 items you need when you're building and upgrading stuff. So I finally got my head wrapped around it. So I actually jumped into a server by myself the last couple days. So I was kind of been trying to do that. So he usually kind of goes into the more community maps where they mod it so you can do, like 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever times, experience and when you're mining stuff and, getting different materials and stuff like that. And I jumped into one of the ones we had been playing just so I can kind of get my feet wet a little. So, but I think I'm going to go into one of the vanilla Rust servers where, you really have to grind a good bit to get all your resources that you need. So in the coming weekend, I want to try it that way. Because it's kind of like in Minecraft or in some of the other games where there's like a creative mode where it's like, I don't like playing that because it doesn't just like you get everything like just like that. So it's like, I don't really like that. So I kind of do like the grind in these games. So I want to try that out this coming week. But so I've been doing that. For the most part, it's there is a little bit of PvE in Rust, but it's basically a PvP game. Like you're going against other people and other groups. It's a little hard doing it solo, so I'm going to try to find maybe a low population server. At first when I do try the vanilla servers, just to really get going. But eventually, I want to try to get into one of those big servers and maybe I'll bring my son into it and possibly a couple friends or 2, just so we can kind of. It's always better, like I've seen in some videos too, where you have a big group, so you can always have somebody possibly online or more or less online, maybe not 24/7, but throughout the day that you can have your base watched and try to fight off attackers or people trying to raid your stuff. So I'll continue on that.
Very cool. So for me, I mentioned earlier that as a relief valve for my disappointment in System Shock, I tried to play Call of Duty Vanguard, the single-player campaign, because I have the game. I mainly got the game to get into the multiplayer, which I didn't really stick with because I didn't like it as much as Black Ops Cold War. But I thought, I'd loop back around and try out the single-player campaign. The single-player, and because it's Sledgehammer and we have Call of Duty 3 coming out this fall, I personally have really liked the Sledgehammer single-player campaigns. I was disappointed in this one, though, but I knew that word was out on the street, but I thought I would give them a chance. I really love the WW2 campaign, and maybe that was partially because of the performance of Josh Duhamel and maybe having, Josh Duhamel's this is not an Oscar award-winning actor. Not to take anything away from him. He does fine. Like, he's, done a good showing and stuff that he's been in. But I feel like he kind of ratcheted up quite honestly, I actually think that his WW2 performance was arguably a lot better than his Transformers performance in some other movies that he's been in. But the Vanguard single player campaign just didn't the characters in there just didn't hook me in the same way that the WW2 campaign did. That opening sequence in the WW2 campaign really did a lot to kind of immediately kickstart a feeling of kind of camaraderie with the other members of that squad, that platoon that you were playing with. A sense of loyalty to the other characters. I didn't get any of that kind of emotional vibe. The eclectic mix of characters that were thrown into the Vanguard single player campaign just didn't have that gravitas and didn't have that hook for me. Now, maybe they will as the game goes on, but they didn't right off the bat. Probably the most disappointing thing in my playing this is server problems. When I went in to play this game, when I installed it, it kind of installs in the launcher that's in the front end of Call of Duty, and now it like gives me on that PC the ability, presents, hey, do you want to play the Modern Warfare 2 content or do you want to play the Vanguard content? And so on 2 occasions, I brought up my Blizzard my Battle.net client, and it said, Battle.net servers are really full right now. We've put you in a queue to log in. And I'm like, hold on a second, guys. Like, not letting me into the game is one thing, but there's absolutely no need for you to put me in a queue for me to simply launch the client, right, and log in. Like, that's unacceptable, right? And then again, because Call of Duty often does, when you haven't started a game for a long time, when you boot it, it says, hey, we need to do an update, and that update requires a restart, which like literally happens like every time I play Modern Warfare 2. And I'm like, how can you need to do a restart? Like, I just played the game yesterday. But that's what I was presented with Vanguard, and that didn't surprise me too much. But when I went into Vanguard, same message. Servers are full, overstressed or whatever. We've got you in a queue to log in. I'm like, guys, I've just brought up the launcher for Call of Duty. I'm going to click into the thing and just be presented like the launcher for the content. I'm not even, and I'm playing the single player campaign, right? So that's just very unfriendly. And like, look, this is a way to get me to just drop off of Call of Duty entirely. I don't need this, So didn't particularly care for that. One game that I did care for, I don't know why I always have a problem readily IDing this in StreamYard, but I've mentioned before that, or I haven't actually mentioned before, but way back in the day, and in addition to all the racing games that I enjoy playing, I used to play the WSBK series, the World Superbike series, that was done by EA before they abandoned it. They don't do that series anymore, and so we're kind of hard pressed to find decent, good motorcycle racing games that actually reflect like a given like regulated sport. But the MotoGP series has been doing a pretty decent job. It is by a developer called Milestone out of Italy. But I have tried these games, right? It's kind of like a return, kind of like, hey, I really enjoy playing WSBK. Let me try these MotoGP series. I've tried MotoGP and I have like failed to keep the bike upright for more than like a few hundred meters at a time. And yes, you're going to see me take a low side, right, in this, but this is a fairly benign, event in comparison to the normal problems that I have with this game. So in addition to all the time that I've been spending on F123, I actually spent a number of hours kind of finally figuring out how to ride the bike in MotoGP 22. And yes, I did take a low side spill there, but this is actually me winning the race. And in fact, if I hadn't taken that low side spill, you'd see no other motorcycles in this video because I was so far ahead. But, in a number of hours, I went from, like literally, like in this stretch, like I would have fallen at the start of that corner and I would have fallen at the end of that straightaway. Again, like I couldn't just ride the bike at all. But I finally pulled it together, got myself on pole for the first race here in Qatar at Losail Raceway, and then wound up winning this race. I love this has a lot of the hooks that I really like that F1 series has. I picked the colors for this livery, so and it's got hooks in there for you to kind of customize things, for you to kind of build your own team, which I did. This is me, riding a Husqvarna bike who I race for now. So it lets you manage your career. It does not have the graphical fidelity of like the off-track stuff. So like the character, like it shows like, it shows like people like in the paddock and in your, people who are part of your pit crew and things like that. And, that doesn't look as sharp as it does look like in the F1 series, but it's still a great game. Still having a fun time playing it. And it's really nice to be back to include like a motorcycle racing game right in the mix of all the other racing games that I play. So Tao, you've got one more game that you want to take us out with?
Yeah, I thought you were on time trials there for a second until you took that spill because I didn't see anybody. You were way out in front of everybody.
Yeah, that was the end of the race. That was going into the end of the race, and so like the penchant with Formula One, and it's kind of the same thing I'd say with MotoGP. Like very often in races, like first place like gets out ahead and they're just gone, right? And really, what you spend the rest of the time watching the races, there's usually a fight between second and third, and then there's usually like a really big fight like between like fourth through seventh is kind of where the big meat of the race really takes place.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of how that race was going.
Nice. All right. Yeah, and my final game here is Bloons TD6. Okay, once again, I've been playing that for a while on mobile, but also they released it on actually Epic Games as their free game, which actually I believe it's still the free game until Thursday of this coming week. I think is when they're changing their free games out. So I actually played quite a bit on PC the last few days, or pretty much like that last half of the week this past week. And I got pretty much this, but I think I'm around the same level in the same area of where I ended up on mobile. Also, been having a little bit of trouble on mobile, actually on both sides. Just on the second course or second level, I beat the first level in the easy and medium settings, and then or difficulties, and then I've been trying to. I beat the second level on the easiest setting. Now I'm just trying to get past the medium settings. They throw like different balloons and stuff at you. I think I mentioned this last week, obviously. And, there's just regular balloons and there's ceramic balloons, and now there's metal balloons, which I didn't even know about. And I didn't have the right upgrades for my characters, so I just keep getting wiped out, and I kind of keep forgetting about it. So I do the correct upgrades and do this other stuff. There's also like challenges you can do. I'm assuming they're like probably daily or at least weekly challenges, where it's just like a single. Some of them are just like you use just a single unit. Others are, I think you start off with just there's like superhero, or I shouldn't say superhero. I think they're called hero characters you get, which they have special abilities that the other ones don't have. So you can literally the first guy just has like a regular bow and arrow. And then he has a couple of abilities. One is like a massive like barrage of arrows that comes down, and I think the other one is just like he rapid fires, shoots everything. But the other ones, the regular units don't have that kind of extra like special abilities. So there's just stuff like that. So I'm still enjoying it. I really like it. I think I mentioned it last week or the week before. Just something I never thought I'd get into, but I've really been getting into this type of tower defense game. So I'm going to continue on that the coming week.
Yeah, I want to say I've come across articles that show that this game. So I'm just reading its Wikipedia entry, which I assume is fairly well peer reviewed. Since I don't see any comments saying that this needs to be cleaned up. But Bloons TD6 topped as the best-selling app within the first week of release, according to Catherine Harris from Stuff.co.New Zealand. The game Bloons TD6 consistently reaches among the top-selling paid apps in the world, including the world's most bought paid app in 2018. She argues that the success of this game, among other Ninja Kiwi apps, has helped shape the success of New Zealand's gaming industry. Dustin Bailey from PC Games N noted the increased popularity of the Steam version of Bloons TD6 and the great appearance of the game on Twitch. He attributed further success of the game by both the discounted US $1 price on the Steam version and its nostalgic factor for players who had previously played the older Flash games in the Bloons TD series. Kotaku noted that New Zealand's gaming industry revenue surpassed that of Australia's gaming industry in 2019, with one of the main sources being from Bloons TD6, the others being Path of Exile by Grinding Gear Games and Valleys Between by Little Fossack. So I'm sure it being the game on Epic, the free game on Epic, is putting that game in a lot more hands, which will hopefully for them, lead to higher revenue. Also kind of gives me the itch of... There used to be some tower defense games that, same thing, that I would play on mobile, and then when I would see them make the jump to PC, right, I would play them there mainly. Now I can't even remember the name of the Field Runners was a tower defense game that I used to play.
I think I've heard of that one. Yeah, I don't think I've played.
Field Runners and Field Runners 2. So very cool. Tao, anything else to mention? What do you got planning to play coming up here next?
So I'll probably try to get to the like I said, the DLC for Arizona Sunshine. I think that one took us maybe like 2 or 3 hours at the most. The first one, or just the regular campaign. So I'm assuming the other ones will probably be fairly fairly shorter, so we should be able to knock them out probably this week or so. And then that's pretty much it that I've been looking forward to this coming week. Maybe some more other VR games too. So I'm getting into that more.
Yeah, I personally have no idea what I'm playing next. I've got several more sessions of Formula One, of F1 23 that I want to get in, as well as more sessions of MotoGP 22. So we'll just see. Like I said, I'm just kind of getting back into making gaming a groove after kind of being, like I said, kind of disillusioned with it. You know, it's been a chunk of time. Actually, you know, watching Spec Ops Lioness on, I can't remember which streaming network that's on now, but as well as Justified City Primeval, I think is the name of the show. So I was doing things other than gaming, but I'm starting to get back in the groove now. But other than, you know, like I said, several more sessions of F1 and MotoGP 22. I don't know where I will head next, but we will see. So who's hosting next week? I also don't know that. I just realized today, after coming back into the fold, that I hadn't made the schedule for the month of August. So I will get on that this week once I get the audio version of this episode posted. So thanks a lot for everybody who happened to swing by and watched the live stream. We appreciate you. For anyone out there who comes through and watches the archive version of this episode on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, we appreciate you as well. Please remember, if you do, to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can just receive a notification whenever we post new content. Until next time, I've been Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, joined here by Tilemaster99. We will see you guys next week at the regular time at roughly 8:45 p.m. on Sunday evening. So until then, good night, good luck, and good gaming. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here.